Today is Palm Sunday, a day of joy, a day of expectation, a day in which Jesus makes a proclamation of who he is to the world through symbolic gestures. Now, when I was first a Christian, I assumed that the things that happened here were happening because of Jesus' prescience and his use of divine powers. But I have since revised that idea. So when we hear in chapter 21 of Matthew, when they had come near Jerusalem and had reached Bethphage at the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying to them, "Go into the village ahead of you, and immediately you will find a donkey tied and a colt with her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, just say this, 'The Lord needs them,' and he will send them immediately." This probably was something that Jesus set up in advance. He was aware that he wanted to enter Jerusalem on a donkey, which was a fulfillment of certain messianic prophecies and expectations, and he wanted to do it very close to the time of Passover, because in so doing he would have the opportunity to connect with the most amount of people, the regular people. This is what he was trying to connect to at this time. He'd had plenty of tries at convincing the religious leaders of the time, those who had power, and for the most part they weren't interested. And so Jesus is trying to connect with the regular folks. Now he knew that by making a connection with the regular folks that he was going to run into some trouble. But he knew that this was the moment. This was the moment in which he was going to have to try to make that connection. And so he had set up in advance that there would be a donkey and a colt at a certain place where the disciples were going to be visiting, and there was a code word that if they were asked, what's happening here, why are you taking this donkey, they were supposed to tell him the Lord needs them, and then the person would release the animals. And so Jesus sets this up, and he knows where he is going and what he is doing. And so as he goes forward on this road to Jerusalem, he is one of many pilgrims coming into Jerusalem at this time of Passover, and he is proclaiming through these symbolic acts who he is. And it mentions that the very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road, and others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road, and the crowds were shouting. And so these are symbolic ways in which people would have showed, that this was a very important person who was coming into town. This was someone who deserved the honors of a king or a prophet or even the Messiah. And so these symbolic gestures, with palm leaves and placing things on the road for Jesus to walk upon them like a red carpet, all of these gestures were designed to create an air of expectancy. All were designed to create the opportunity for everyone to see who Jesus really was. Now, up to this time, Jesus had been careful about to whom he would reveal that he was the Messiah. The Son of God, who had come into the world to save the world. He was very careful about that, because had this become known too early, it might have caused riots and things like that, and it would have brought him much more quickly into a confrontation with the religious leaders. And so this was the moment. This is the time in which he was ready to make this conflict real, and also to tell people who he was and what he was doing. And so this is the opportunity for people to decide. Now the Messiah is coming. It is clear that this is what he is proclaiming himself to be. Now what will you decide? Will you decide that this is indeed the Messiah, the one who God has sent in order to save the world? Or will you decide that, well, perhaps this is just one more person who has, who is trying to make a big name for themselves, and who is just perhaps less than the Bible says that he is? All of us have to make this kind of choice, and all of us give an opportunity to proclaim this to those that we know and love. And so on Palm Sunday, it should be a day of joy and expectation. It should also be a day of proclamation, when we tell people what we believe about who this Jesus was, who came into Jerusalem riding humbly on a donkey.